Good morning, Sloan. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing good. So my name is Janie Tiller, and I'm an occupational therapy student, and I've created a course for us to go through called the WRAVMA Administration via Telehealth. So are you familiar with the WRAVMA?
No, I'm not.
Okay, so that's exactly what this course is for. We're going to go through the different components of it, as well as the administration, what that typically looks like, and how telehealth can be adapt the different ways that the RAVMA is performed to better accommodate for the student. So it stands for the Wide Range Assessment of Visual Motor Abilities, and it's typically administered in the school system to assess different visual motor impairments. Along the way, if you have any questions, feel free to stop, but we're going to go ahead and get started if that's okay. All right, so to start, we're going to do a little icebreaker, and this is two truths and a lie. I'm sure you've heard of this little game. So I've got three different statements here, and two of them are true regarding the RAVMA assessment, and one of them is false. So I'm going to read them out loud to you, and then you can pick the one that you think is not true. So first, the RAVMA is composed of 5 subtests. Second, the RAVMA was published in 1995. And third, the RAVMA is a common school-based assessment. So which of these three do you think is not true?
Mm, I'm gonna say that it was not published in 1995.
Okay. Final answer?
Uh, sure.
Okay. Let's see if you were right. So the RAVMA is actually only composed of 3 subtests. It has been around for a while as it was published in 1995, but we will go a little bit more in depth with how that test was standardized and when it came to be later on in the course.
Well, learn something new.
There you go. So next we're going to do a little role play activity. Do you have a sheet of paper near you and a pencil?
Yes, actually.
Perfect. All right, so go ahead and set that out in front of you, and I want you to close your eyes and follow my instructions. Okay, so in the top right corner of your paper, I would like you to write your name, first and last. And then right below it, I would like you to write today's date. And when you're done, you can open your eyes. Okay, can you hold it up to the camera and show me? Okay, so it's a little bit crooked. It's not quite straight across. Can you tell me how that activity felt, not being able to see what you were writing?
It was really strange, and I didn't like that I couldn't see, and I had to use my other hand to like even feel where the top right corner was, and I felt like I was writing in a straight line, but after opening my eyes, that seemed to not be the case. But I didn't like it. It was weird.
Yeah. So the purpose of that assessment is to kind of simulate in a way what it feels like to have visual motor impairments or visual spatial impairments, not being able to kind of integrate both your vision and your body movements together. So that's what some of the kids that this assessment would be performed on would be feeling. And you can see right there just how that would affect some different occupations, including academic performance, especially. All right, so now we're going to do a little overview of the course. This is kind of what different sections we've got set up for the next 30 minutes or so. So first, we're going to go through the purpose of the assessment. We're going to discuss the clinical relevance of the RAVMA and telehealth. So why would we use the RAVMA? What would be the selection process in picking that? And then also, in what situations would telehealth be appropriate to use? Next, we're going to go into the test administration. And this is going to kind of go more in depth about what specific impairments this assessment is used with. So different conditions and diagnoses that may be common to have visual motor impairments, how it's typically given in just a regular in-person session, and the different subtests that make up the administration. Next, we're going to go into the scoring. This is very similar to a lot of standardized assessments in the scoring, but we are going to go through how to find those and what they mean, how to apply them into your treatment sessions once you start with intervention. We're going to discuss some different telehealth considerations. So what adaptations might be integrated into the session to improve participation, engagement, what modifications might have to be made to make sure that this assessment is successful. Next, we're going to do some scenario-based learning where I'm going to have you apply some of the knowledge that you've gotten from this course so far and kind of give you a safe space to practice some of those skills so that you feel a little bit more competent after taking this course. And then lastly, we're going to wrap up the session. Do you have any questions before we start?
I don't think so.
All right. So to begin, I've got 5 different course objectives that I would like you to feel pretty good about doing by the end of the course. So to start, I would like you to feel competent in identifying the selection process of using WRAVMA and the population that it's intended to be used for. So again, going back to the different diagnoses, the conditions, the age group that you would use this test for. So why would you pick this test over different standardized assessments? Secondly, I would like you to be able to demonstrate basic knowledge of the WRAVMA and the interpretation of the scores. So getting you a little more familiar with the content, the subtests, the different materials, kind of the flow of it, just so that it's a little more natural once you use it in a clinical setting. I want you to be able to describe how therapists can increase engagement of clients during a virtual assessment. So as we know, it's a little bit more difficult to stay engaged through a virtual session than it is in person. There's a lot more distractions. So just figuring out some different strategies that we can use to increase the engagement there. Being able to apply evidence-based articles to increase the efficacy and reliability of the assessment. So making sure that even with these adaptations, we're still able to measure what we're intending to measure, that we are staying along the guidelines of the test. And then lastly, being able to understand the caregiver's role in providing assistance to the child during the assessment. So understanding how they can help both the child and us during the assessment, acting almost as a mediator and helping carry through the things that we ask of the child. All right, so going into the purpose and clinical relevance of this test, the purpose is going to be to understand where the breakdown of skills is happening so that the therapist can create an individualized treatment plan to target those areas. So maybe the child has fine motor coordination. They're able to grasp their pencil with an age-appropriate grasp. They're able to manipulate that pencil in their hand, flip it around to erase if they made a mistake. That's not an issue. Maybe their issue is with discriminating right and left or discriminating their spatial relations. So they don't know where they are on the paper while they're writing. So this test kind of allows us to see all those different areas that make up these occupations, such as handwriting, letter and number recognition, reading, left-right discrimination, and copying from the board. So by analyzing these, we can kind of see in which area they're having the most impairment so that we can target that specifically and improve their performance. And then, like I said, a lot of these skills are used at the school. And impairment in these can cause a real academic disruption and impair their ability to succeed in school. So targeting these areas are really important, especially in school-age children. All right. Before we go into the assessment overview, any questions? You doing good?
Yep.
All right. So to start off, there are several materials needed for this test. It's all included in a nice little bag, but we've got just as many other standardized assessments, the administration and the scoring manual. We've got some drawing forms, some visual matching forms, and examiner record forms. We've also got a pegboard and pegs, as well as pencil and markers. So, like I said earlier, there are 3 different subtests for this assessment. So you've got a booklet that goes with each of those subtests, which can kind of make it a little bit confusing to have that many different resources in front of you. But they're labeled pretty clearly, which makes it nice. And this is from Pearson's website. If you ever want to go on there and check it out, it has the cost of the materials and a breakdown of what all is included. Okay, so a little bit more administration information. Like I said, the area of assessment is visual motor skills. This is going to look at the integration of both of those. Of course, this assessment is not given until the vision check and hearing check have been completed, just to rule out visual acuity as a factor in their performance. And in addition, the time to administer this test is typically about 10 to 15 minutes per subtest. So you can administer this test using only a few subtests. So you could just give the fine motor subtest or the visual spatial subtest. However, to get more of a comprehensive idea of where the child is at, it is usually recommended to do all 3. So in total, that would be about 30 minutes to administer the whole test. And some different conditions and diagnoses associated with visual motor skill impairment is visual processing disorder, also known as VPD. This is seen a lot in children with ADHD, as well as autism and cerebral palsy. So the severity, I guess, can differ based on these different diagnoses and even within them. But those are just a couple that are typically associated with that skill deficit. All right. Also, like I said earlier, there are 3 different subtests. So the first subtest is going to be the drawing test, and then we have the matching test and the pegboard test. We're going to go a little bit more in depth on each of those. Ooh. There we go. Okay. So for the drawing test, this is a little snippet of what the actual booklet looks like. This is going to be used to assess the visual motor ability of the child. So what they're going to do is the therapist is going to draw a design. So on this example, the therapist would draw a line coming down from the balloon to go into the man's hand. And then the child is going to copy that design on the colored balloon. So they do get a demonstration and they're copying a design. The designs are arranged in order of increasing difficulty. So as the child progresses throughout the test, the items are going to get more difficult. And the test is going to be stopped after 3 consecutive failed items. So if they get 3 drawing items that they cannot copy the design for, you'll just go ahead and finish this subtest of the assessment. All right, and then the matching section. This is also a little snippet of it. It assesses visual spatial skills. So a little bit different from the drawing subtest. The child's going to look at an image. So for this example, we'll look at these top 2 pictures. And then they're going to look below at these picture options and pick the one that fits best. So for example, this one on the right of the man holding the balloon, his face is obviously missing. So the correct response would be this one here with the man's head. And then On the top left, there's just a picture, identical picture associated that the child would choose. And there you can kind of see two different levels of difficulty. So obviously the one with the missing picture is a little more difficult than just finding the matching picture. You have a question?
Yeah, so you mentioned that it stopped after 6 items were wrong out of 8. Does it matter if those are 6 or like in a row?
Yes. Well, it has to be 3 in a row. So
Oh,
if there is a gap, you continue going. That's the thing with standardized assessments. There might be kind of that splinter of skills. So once 3 right in a row are wrong, you will go ahead and terminate that. But if they continue to get some right in between, then you just keep giving the assessment.
so it's 3 in a row for each subtest?
Yes.
Okay.
Now this one is a little different, the matching subtest. So the drawing test is 3 consecutive. The matching test is going to be 6. So this is stopped after 6 incorrect items out of the 8. And you'll be able to see a little bit more clearly on the scoring manual how this is done. But we'll get to that in just a little bit. All right. And the last subtest is going to be the pegboard test. This is probably similar to different assessments you've seen for adults. This is going to assess fine motor skills, such as the grasp and hand manipulation, intrinsic muscle strength. So the child is going to insert as many pegs as they can with their dominant hand in 90 seconds. The timer will start when the child touches the first peg, and it will stop at 90 seconds. This one's pretty straightforward, and the scoring is a lot more simple. Okay, so what happens if you're not able to get these different test booklets to the child at their home? Well, there's some different material adaptations that we can use that can be sent through the mail or through email for quick and easy use. First, to begin with, if the pegboard is not something that the parents are able to pay for, there are cheap little pegboards from craft stores, such as this picture on the left. This was about $10, and while the materials are a little bit different, it kind of assesses the same skill. Same thing with the copying, just having a regular notebook with paper and a pencil. The therapist can draw a design either on the screen or on a piece of paper and hold it up into the camera while the child copies it at home on their own piece of paper. And then lastly, with the visual spatial subtest, there are little worksheets online that can be emailed or printed where the child is going to recognize kind of what object is missing or what objects are related to the picture in question. Now, when you're doing these adaptations, it is important to note in your documentation that it was given in an unstandardized fashion because the exact materials and instructions given in the manual were not used. However, if there just isn't a way to get those materials to the family, this is an option. Okay, we're going to go into scoring now. For the drawing test, a check mark is going to be given for each correct response. There are 2 responses under each item. So if they get both of those responses correct, so 2 check marks, you're going to circle that item number. And then at the end of that scoring subsection, you're going to total the number of circled items, and that's going to be the raw score. For the matching test, you're going to place the letter of the child's response onto the line. And if the response matches the letter noted, you're going to circle that symbol in the column to the left. Like I said, if 6 out of the 8 are wrong, then that's going to kind of cut the child off from the test. If that's the case, if they get 6 out of the 8 wrong, you're going to go ahead and draw a ceiling line above that 8th item, and you're going to total the number of correct responses before the ceiling line. However, if the child doesn't get 6 wrong in a row, you'll just count all of them. And that will be the raw score for the matching test. For the pegboard test, it is very straightforward. Like I said, you're just going to count the number of pegs that they inserted into the board with their dominant hand in 90 seconds. All right, so these are some different scores that you'll kind of be able to derive from the raw score. So the standard score, you're going to use the ages or the child's age to find the appropriate standard score in a table. So that'll be easy to find. Just look at the raw score in their age group, go over, and it'll have the standard score as well as the percentage right next to it. So that will kind of give you an idea of how the child is performing when compared to same age related peers. In addition, the visual motor integration composite score is just a sum of all the standard scores. This typically isn't used clinically, but it does kind of add to the assessment if you want another score there. Really quickly, just talking about the reliability and validity of the WRAVMA. It was nationally standardized on 2,282 children aged 3 to 17, and internal consistency, content validity, they were both supported from statistical analyses. So basically, this just means that the test measures what is intended to be measured. So now we're going to kind of go into the telehealth portion of this course. We're going to look at some of the benefits to using telehealth because obviously an in-person session is going to be preferred to use rather than over the screen. But there are some cases in which telehealth can be beneficial. So it does, or it can increase access to services, give improved access to specific providers and specialists that the child wouldn't normally be able to see. It provides a lot of flexibility for both the caregiver and the child and the clinician. So with time and an environment, maybe you could fit in more sessions than you would be able to in person. And in addition, it prevents unnecessary delays in receiving care. All right, so preparation and planning during virtual visits is very important. So here are a couple of different tips that the therapist can use when it's setting up their virtual space. So first, you're going to want to practice using the platform and kind of be familiar with, for Zoom, like how to share the screen, how to use the whiteboard, how to videotape a session, things like that. You're also going to want to have IT support on hand just in case something malfunctions, so you can have quick access to them to get that problem solved. You're going to want to verify with the child that the audio is working, do a little mic check, and have the child speak back before you even start talking. You're obviously going to want to log in and start the Zoom video before the session start time to have everything set up and ready so that when that child enters, they're ready to start working. We're going to have the caregiver contact information readily available in case there's any issues on their end, so that that can be addressed. Something that might be helpful is creating a reusable Zoom link so that you don't have to create one every week or however often the sessions are, just so the parent can keep that one Zoom link on file and not have to keep up with tons of different ones. You know, they can flag that email or whatever they want to do with that link. And then lastly, go ahead and communicate the materials that are going to be needed for the caregiver to have prior to the session. So like I was saying, with those adaptive materials, if those are going to be needed, or if the test booklets are going to be given to them, go ahead and have that done before the session starts. Okay, for the environment, you're going to want to make sure that there is sufficient lighting for the therapist to be seen clearly. Set up the camera so that the whole body is in the frame, and avoid wearing distracting clothing. These are kind of self-explanatory, but important to talk about. Avoid distractions in the background, select a quiet space, and limit distractions such as TV, phones, email, etc. Engagement and motivation, as I said, is a really big thing over these virtual sessions. So as soon as the child comes in, you're going to want to have a welcoming greeting, maintain eye contact with them, promote smiling and gestures just to kind of keep it more active. You're going to want to avoid looking down, establish a good flow, maybe give them kind of an outline, as I did in this PowerPoint, of what's going to be going on throughout the session. Incorporate breaks. These could be movement breaks, bathroom breaks, drinking breaks. Also, just asking the child periodically how they're doing. How are your eyes feeling, to produce or prevent eye strain? Are you doing okay? Do you need a break? Kind of checking in to see where they are mentally. And also incorporating a fidget toy might be helpful with children that have issues with selective attention. There are some safety concerns, so you want to consider whether the telehealth session is going to give the patient the most safe, effective, and appropriate delivery of services. You're also, before each session, going to want to verify the patient's name, date of birth, address, etc., prior to starting the session, just to make sure that you have the right client. Some legal considerations. The practitioners, of course, should adhere to all copyright laws and requirements when administering assessments. You don't want pictures of the test booklet, for example, to get sent out for some reason. So just be careful with what materials you're providing. You're going to want to comply with federal and state laws, regulations, and licensing. And you're going to want to have a secure Wi-Fi network that you're working on. So adaptations, if the administration process requires a modification, as I said before, you're going to want to provide that in your documentation, stating that it was not standardized. For the scoring, one good thing about Zoom is that you can record the sessions with permission and go back and watch those videos to maybe pick up on some things that you didn't quite see the first time around. And then application, just keeping the kids' feelings in mind, especially with the older age children when discussing scores from their tests with parents. So now we're going to do a little scenario-based learning. I'm going to provide you with a scenario and I'll just have you answer the question. So for the first one, your child enters the Zoom and this is what their screen looks like. What would you do in this situation? Maybe give 2 suggestions on how to fix their setup.
I'd probably ask them to maybe try and turn the face their body and camera the other way so that they're going against the light, or maybe close the blinds, or just completely do the Zoom in another room where the lighting is better.
Yes, that is a great consideration. Also, if the child is maybe working on a fine motor activity, kind of setting up the camera so their hands are in the frame would also be a good suggestion. All right, scenario number 2, you're in the middle of giving the assessment when the child loses attention and stops all participation. What do you do?
The first thing that comes to mind is thinking of something the child loves to do, like a reward or things they love to do or have, and remind them that they aren't able to have those things until they finish their activity at hand.
Yeah, for sure. Positive reinforcement is an awesome thing to use. So maybe incorporate that into the breaks. So maybe we do this subtest and then we watch a YouTube video or whatever it may be. Good job. All right, scenario 3. You ask the child/guardian to confirm their name, date of birth, and address, and it does not match the information that you have. What do you do?
Oof. Before, sorry.
Don't think too deep about it.
Well, before doing anything, I would just go through it again for the second time and just have them repeat it. And again, if it's not correct, just politely say that, I don't know.
So for this, to avoid any safety or legal concerns, I would just go ahead and end the Zoom immediately. Of course, be respectful about the way you go about it. but just say maybe my records are not matching up with yours. So I'm going to go ahead and end this Zoom call and kind of look into that a little bit more before we actually begin our session.
I think that's what I was trying to say.
Yeah, there you go. Scenario 4, your child goes to the bathroom for a break and brings their computer along with them. What do you do?
Ask them to leave the bathroom or turn their camera off and sound off.
Exactly.
It's inappropriate.
Sometimes they forget to turn the sound off, which that can be a little bit embarrassing. But yes, just providing them with a little motivation. And lastly, your child still has not successfully copied a design correctly on the drawing subtest after attempting 4 different items. What do you do? Now remember, the drawing subtest and the matching subtest have different criteria.
So drawing was 3. So you would stop. You should have already stopped after 3, and that's their ceiling, and you move on to the next subtest.
Very good. All right, so that is all I have for this course. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. I've also provided this survey here where you can provide feedback on how this course went for you. And here are my resources. Thank you for your time and have a good day.
Thank you.